Welcome to the Art of Adventure podcast. I'm your host, Mac Tegg. I'm an illustrator, and I created this podcast to get to know other artists who are creating fantasy and sci-fi artwork. Joining me today is Hodag of Hodag RPG.
Hello, everybody in Radioland, podcast world, etc.
So, first off, how old are you, and how long have you been creating artwork for the fantasy scene?
I am 35. I was born in 85. And I started creating... I've been doing art basically my whole life, like since I was about 4.
Sure.
I guess I like pretty much from the very beginning, like I was like, drawing characters and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you're asking though, right? You're asking like, when did I start actually doing fantasy illustration stuff?
Mm-hmm.
The first time that I did anything like that, I had a friend in one of the 3 high schools I went to, that was creating a game, a card game. And so he hired me, quote unquote, to draw cards for him, for the artwork for the cards. And that was sort of my first sort of foray into that.
I see.
So 2002, yeah.
Okay, that's quite a while, especially in nowadays.
On and off. A very extensive layover in trying to break into sequential art, which just never worked out for me. Mm-hmm. So I decided that one of my first passions was fantasy illustration. So I said, okay, when I turned about 26, I was like, okay, it's illustration time. So 28, I should say. Yeah, 2013 is when I started looking at stuff as far as doing fantasy illustration.
What piqued your interest in fantasy? Because you said you'd been into it prior to getting your first card-making gig. What kicked it off for you?
I started... Well, I always loved, my mom got me into The Hobbit when I was a kid. I used to do Accelerated Reader, which was the smart kid book club that you could earn points and stuff. And one of the big point books that my mom brought home for me, because I was just like, all right, here's a list of all the books that I'm going to read because they're all 900 points, Little Women and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and everything else. And one of the ones she brought home, she's like, oh, you're really going to like this one. It's called The Hobbit. And it's an adventure story. And so I was like, oh, fantastic. So I go and I read it. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, what? The guy's head gets knocked off and goes down a rabbit hole, and that's how they invented Gaul? This is insane. I love it. And that was kind of like my first a deep Hobbit cut for you. But that was my first thing of fantasy, and I was like, this is awesome. But my mom's a huge Anglophile. She loves Great Britain stuff, so it's in UK and Ireland stuff. So I grew up with oh gosh, I got it right here. There's Brian Froud's fairy book and Peter Hanning's The Irish Legends, The Irish Leprechaun's Kingdom rather, were 2 books that I grew up with that I just would read over and over and over again. And so I kind of had sort of and then of course was it the Gnomes book, David the Gnome. I was big into David the Gnome.
Yeah, I love David the Gnome.
It's kind of one of those. Yeah, I always gravitated towards fantasy stuff, more traditional myths and legends and stuff. And then that sort of all laid the framework for in 2000 I started playing D&D, and I grew up in a pretty both my parents that I was living with at the time, my dad and my stepmom at the time when I started playing D&D were oh, like, it's like, that's not good. They were very conservative, very, and they kind of like were still in the sort of satanic panic mode.
Yeah.
My dad was pretty cool about it, though. He was like, yeah, I used to like play the Dungeon board game back in the 70s and 80s, so it's not like that big of a deal. Like, it's just, wizards and knights and stuff. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
And so, they were pretty concerned about it, but when I started playing, I was just like, this is incredible. It's a video game, but you're not bound by anything, and I pretty much started creating artwork.
Nice.
Right then and there. Yeah. So, drawing my characters, my friends' characters.
Did your family encourage your artistic exploration?
Yeah. Both. I had my grandparent. I had a grandparent, my grandmother. Really encouraged me early on when I was about 4 to like. There's a famous family story where I was asking my grandma to draw Batman for me because I was 4 years old and really wanted my dad and my uncles who would draw, and they're more talented than someone would say just like just off the street or whatever, but they're I surpassed them at a very early age. I'm a legend. What can I say? No, no. I asked my grandma to draw me Batman. She's like, "Why don't you draw Batman?" And I said, "I don't know. I didn't know that I had that option." And so I drew a picture of Batman riding a motorcycle, and that was the first thing that I ever drew. And then things just progressed from there. But yeah, both my mom and my dad have always been super, super, super supportive of my sort of artwork. And I was encouraged early on. So.
Is anyone else in your family artistic? You mentioned your dad and uncle.
I have, so I've got, my siblings are music oriented. And so I have a brother that's really interested in art, and he actually married an artist. It's one of those things where it's like I'm the visual artist in the family.
Ah, I gotcha. Did you go to school for art at all?
No. All of this in only one semester of junior college. I did attend 3 different high schools, like I said, though, so I did take art. I had the ability to take art for most of that time, and one of the high schools that I went to had a really, really, really nice, good art program. So, Mr. Van Dam, wherever you are, thank you for teaching me the basics of composition. So.
Please save the shout-outs for the end.
Okay, all right. Sounds good, man.
You seem to put out a lot of not just artwork, but general gaming content, like a lot. I was looking through some of your other projects, like you mentioned a moment ago that you just released something today. So I want to hear about that, but I also want to hear about a new project that you've recently released, The Necromancer's Tomb. Something I had never seen before. What inspired you to make this diceless video game, I guess you could call it?
Diceless audio game. Yeah. Which also spells out DAG. It works out to the dice adventure game and diceless audio game. So I'm on brand.
Yeah.
That was actually inspired by, I was listening to a great podcast called Thought Eater. And have you ever talked to Froth at all? From Thought Eater? Really nice person. And anyways, I was listening to an episode where he was talking to somebody that was like blind or unsighted or had less eyesight, and they were talking about sort of like visibility issues in gaming, where it's like a lot of times like and especially like that's what kind of prompted me to start like I'm not really I'm kind of all over the map. Like I have a high energy level, as you've mentioned. I do a lot of stuff and I say a lot of things. But I've been trying to tag my artwork with like visual descriptions. Because I didn't know that you could add alt text. And then I was like, because I always said alt, and I was like, what is that for? And then so I found out about that, and then I was thinking it like that conversation got me thinking about what would it be like to run something for. And also, I did have like a blind or an unsighted player. I'm unsure of the actual terminology of like what's the best term to use. But like the person had low visibility, I guess, and GMing for them was like an really interesting experience. And I was also thinking about like what would it be like to create something, a way to play a game that was you didn't have to roll dice, you didn't actually have to look at anything, you just play that audio for someone who didn't, had it would be easy for them to play. It would be easy for anyone to play. Yeah. You could play that game in the dark if you wanted to, And so, or whatever, it's like there's a myriad of ways that you could enjoy that game, and it would make sense to enjoy that game. And so I thought, oh, that'd be like a really cool idea, and nothing makes me more excited than like innovating something like where I'm like, oh man, this is cool. So yeah, I don't know. I just like I got to thinking about it, and then I threw my hat over the wall, and then I did it.
You also have several projects centering around the Hyper Trench, the Hyper Tundra, and the Hyper Terminal.
They just came to me sort of naturally in a dream. Yeah, of course, they're Star Wars. I love Star Wars. There's not much more to it than that. I just thought it'd be fun, like, and I did put the disclaimer in there that it's sort of based on that, like, that like Battle for the Stars or whatever. Those like, it's like people just, Star Wars comes out and then like there's not enough Star Wars for the general consumption, like because there's only just Star Wars at that point. And so, or New Hope, I'm a big, like, it's called A New Hope. They call it A New Hope now. That's what you call it. But anyways, like Star Wars, the franchise. And but yeah, like all that stuff when it was coming out, where there was like that dearth of like everything science fiction got greenlit, and it was kind of like, this is not Star Wars, but it's still very fun. But it's like, yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars person. So that was definitely the intent there.
How did you come up with those locations?
How do you make a Death Star that's not the Death Star? I guess there's a trench. Hyper is a term that exists. I remember as a kid, there was like there was a big deal because they built a hyper Walmart in my area, like hyper, and I was like, that is a really weird thing to name something. And so I guess maybe that was rolling around in the back of my head. But yeah, Hyper Trench, I guess, like, it's like, oh, okay, like, there's also that Escape from the Death Star board game, not the original, but like when I was growing up, we had my brother 1 year for his birthday got a Escape from the Death Star, like, had the Kenner Power of the Force 2 action figures in it, and I was like, oh, this is like a really cool idea, like just a really neat sort of a thing. And so I guess maybe that was like kind of a thing, but it was something that, like, I've been kind of reworking my Space's End idea, which is where all the aliens and everything else I just repurposed from other sort of sci-fi projects that I had been working on. And so it was like, all of throughout the system, it's all of the playable characters are sort of like one recreations of the Kenner action figure line from the 80s that, I grew up in the obviously growing up in 85, I didn't see a new Star Wars action figure on the peg until I was 10 years old. So I was just playing with buckets of, guys, as we call them in the Midwest. But just little buckets of plastic guys that you had them, at your cousin's house, your friend's house, or wherever, So, but yeah, that's where kind of that all came from.
Are you from Wisconsin?
Yes.
I knew it.
Yeah, which would make sense. Yeah. Hodag, are you from Wisconsin? I am indeed. I don't live there now, but I did live there for large swaths of my life, and I was born there.
So you've seen the famous Hodag statue?
No, never. I've never been to Rhinelander. Not a single time. Which is like, it's a dream of mine to go. We were gonna go on the trip. I was gonna go to GaryCon in 2020 rather, early 2020, and like no joke, like it was scheduled like 3 weeks into the beginning of the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, yeah, we're just going to have to cancel. And I never got to go. And then, it's just one of those things where, in the far off future, people are like, pandemic. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know. I'm fully vaxxed now, so I'm ready to go. But I'm still doing all the good stuff, social distancing, masking, everything like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it's the I never got a chance to go. It was taken away from me. So yeah, no, I would love to go though. Someday there will be a picture of me. Maybe I'll finally do a face reveal. It's not true. I'm all around the internet. It's just like one of those things where it's like, I don't know why I'm so like, but I don't do a lot of stuff. I don't know. I guess it's just nice to have privacy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Same.
Anyways, maybe someday you'll see a picture of me.
So tell me about Dagmail. Obviously, it's inspired by chainmail.
This is a stupid idea I had. I have friends that are all into Warhammer, and I was like, oh, Warhammer's really neat. They show me all their little plastic pieces, and I used to collect HeroClix. I get it, but it's like one of those things where it's like, I was like, and how much is this army? And they're like, well, this is close to $1,000, and I'm like, I don't have $1,000.
Yeah.
So I was like, what would it look like to do something where everybody that I know, for the most part, you can go to the dollar store and get a chess set, So I think that that was something that I really wanted to do. I couldn't pass that. Like, I was just walking around and I thought, oh man, like I was literally for a walk and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, that would be too silly to not do. So I definitely did it.
And I appreciate all the ways that you're trying to kind of reinvent how these games can be played. So thanks. How do you describe your artwork in your own words?
Tag-esque. I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw your artwork and I was like, I didn't draw that. And it was I'm absolutely overjoyed that your artwork, this is an aside, you can cut it if you want, but I was like, I saw your artwork and I was like, I didn't do that. That's exactly my taste because I draw what I like. And I was like, holy cats in pajamas, someone else is like following the same path that I am and doing it better digitally. But like, one of those things where it's like this is incredible. What was the question originally?
How would you describe your artwork in your own words?
I don't know. Black and white. I do line art, man. I don't know. Yeah, it's I don't know. I like stuff like a lot of my influences are like Hal Foster with the Prince Valiant comics. Obviously, like nowhere close. I was trying to get really close to Hal Foster, and then I was kind of going down that path. And then the more and more I was thinking about it, I started developing like my thick line style that I use in like Rangers of the Midden Vale. And that comes from Justine Mara Andersen, who's a wonderful illustrator. She's absolutely the best. And she did a 3 ebook called The Hero Builder's Guide. I'm looking at it right now. And the Hero Builder's Guide has these just wonderful black and white illustrations that are just like spot pieces. And basically the idea for that is that it takes you through all the different possible combinations of the 3rd edition D&D, like Dwarven Wizard, Halfling Ranger, whatever. Yeah. And but there's just these beautiful black and white illustrations, and they're done in a really sort of heavy line style. Obviously her work is a little bit more sharp than mine is. But it's just those things really inspired me in my first year and a half of playing D&D, and that really really settled with me. And so I started developing more of a thick line style now that so I switch back and forth. My artwork is, I would say, very classic maybe. ish.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love those like really like I don't like the goofy illustrations that they did in like I think the Dungeon Master's Guide or whatever, where it's like, Dave, I think the barbarian's mad, and like there's like I hate those. Or like there's one that like there's these cartoon people that look Ziggy and they're like dressed up like Mouse and they're gonna go into like a rat cult or something.
Uh-huh.
I just completely breaks immersion. I don't like it. I did not like it. But the but like the other stuff where it's like goofy looking like cleric is like walking down the thing, or like they're splitting up treasure picture. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff where it's like just I don't know. People trying to they didn't know what the visual style of D&D was, so they just started lifting stuff from comics, and it's like I lift stuff from comics all the time. So like sometimes I'll actually go through my very large comic book collection that I'm actually sort of paring down right now, and I'll look through older comics for sort of inspiration, because they used to just lift stuff wholesale from Doctor Strange comics, old like Thor and Conan comics. They just like go through and be like, okay, well this guy looks cool or whatever, and then they'd like change it enough, right? Like wink wink, change it enough to where it's totally fine. But that's so I don't know. That wasn't what you asked, but that's the answer that I gave.
Can you walk us through your process when you create a piece?
I would love to. I actually can't. I kind of go into sort of art mode, and then stuff just kind of pours out. You unzipped me. I'm spilling out. No, it's little Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, I'm like that little talking cartoon TV from Reboot, the old Reboot series, where it was just like constantly playing clips of things. Probably get something diagnosed here, but anyways, it's one of those things where it's just like I don't really have a process. Things just happen, or they don't. So that's just kind of the way it works. I'm sorry, that's not a very good answer, but it's unfortunately it's the truth. Sure. I just kind of tap into the speed force and go.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, or I mean, not vocally, but in the Discord group, that you don't sketch at all. You don't sketch at all, or you don't sketch your pieces?
That's not true. I do sketch sometimes if it's something important. If it's something that I don't have a good I am not good at horses, which is true. Horses. You're an artist,
Yeah.
Horses, cars, city layouts, which as time has gone on, I've just decided that I'm not even going to worry about anymore. If the buildings look weird, that's their problem. I'm not worrying about it. And that's also what got me out of drawing sequential art, or trying to draw sequential art, was I never want to draw another, unless I'm doing it for me. I never want to draw a cityscape. I never want to draw a car that I don't have to, that I'm not designing and making from new. But yeah, no, it's I do sketch sometimes, and a lot of times I will do that, How to Draw Comics the Marvel way, where you sketch out the skeletal framework of the character, and then I'll go over. But for the most part, I have now, in the last 10-ish years, decided that I just taught myself how to draw freehand. And if things look wonky or silly, that's, also, again, not my problem anymore. I've decided that I'm done with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Attention, new artists. How to Draw Comics the Marvel way is a godsend.
Indispensable.
Yeah,
I cannot. Whenever somebody's like, "Oh, my child is looking to get into artwork," or I've always wanted to draw, but I never knew. It's How to Draw Comics the Marvel way. Yeah. Literally, it tells you how to draw everything that you would ever need to know, and it's a great jumping off point.
Yeah.
When I was learning how to draw, I also went through a 2002, I went through a manga phase, and which I never was really big into. I mean, I watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z and FLCL, in that time period. Try again, but oh my gosh, I bought an FLCL shirt for myself. The Mac Tag brought up a mug that was an FLCL mug. This is incredible. This is the best day of my life. I didn't even know they made such a thing. But anyways, so I went through a manga phase and I bought a bunch of Christopher Hart books. I don't know if you're ever familiar with the Christopher Hart series,
No.
but he's I don't know if he's a controversial person or anything. I do know that I gleaned very little from his books, other than how to draw some of the hand techniques that he did in one of his books helped me a little. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna grow by leaps and bounds by getting another book other than How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. No, it's just How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. I don't know, Brune Hogarth and Andrew Loomis and I don't know. I grew up reading comics, obviously, so Alex Ross was the hyper realistic stuff I was pretty excited about.
Yeah,
but then I also as I get older, I'm kind of that's actually really really cool. And I also, but I guess my tastes are running a little bit more towards I don't know, Rankin Bass the Hobbit. Where it's I don't dislike cartoony stuff, but also I kind of I guess there's just a lot of things at play. I would say my art style runs, and also I read a lot of growing up I was always Golden Age comics. So I've read a lot of those really weird Meteor or I don't know, I'm a DC guy, so
nice.
But I'll read any. I just love superheroes. So but yeah, so it's one of those things where it's Martin O'Dell and all of the I'm trying to think of the other sort of Golden Age stuff. I mean, but I have Dick Sprang, Kurt Schaffenberger. Kurt Schaffenberger is a hero of mine. Did all the Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane comics, and he was just so, no disrespect to Kurt Swan, but Kurt Schaffenberger's Superman was I don't know, better in my opinion. Dick Boring, I don't know. All those guys, the Silver Age and Space Age comics, yeah.
Besides comics and other fantasy titles, what other media do you pull inspiration from?
Science fiction. I married a horror fan, so I watch a lot of horror stuff. So, but I don't do a lot of horror stuff. But I do think it kind of influences my sort of. I don't know if you've ever seen I do the grimy stuff and kind of it's never too. I try not to go too graphic with stuff. When I was younger, obviously. I keep mentioning comics, but I grew up during the 90s, so it's kind of the extreme era, so I'd just be oh, Spawn just ripped out that guy's spine, and then it was okay, well, so, funny but gory, sometimes stuff was a thing that I experimented with, but now I just run more towards oh, that skeleton looks very grimy, I like the sort of yucky, funky, goopy stuff, a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just, also I grew up on a almost 1,000-acre farm, so you get a pretty good handle about just things in various states of living and dying, and decay, and you kind of that's a real reality living on a farm. So it's kind of you get to go to the cow graveyard that we had, and go check out the bones and stuff. But I don't know. I guess lived experience, and also as far as media consumption goes. Yeah, I don't know. Just genre stuff basically. I like high adventure stuff. I like a lot of comedies too, but yeah, I don't know. 80s stuff. Been pretty much since the pandemic started. I don't know if it's my brain just trying to go into a reboot and safe mode or something like that, but all I wanted to listen to 80s music and watch goofy 80s comedies, so
Did you ever read any of the old EC horror comics?
Yes, in fact, I have most of the gem reprints from the 90s, and 2 or 3 of the volumes of let's see here, I got a couple of Tales. I like Vault of Horror the best. But we're big Tales from the Crypt people in my house, so we've obviously very familiar with that. I also have a lot of some of the shock suspense stories and things like that, and then also whenever I see them, I'll pick up horror comics for my wife at estate sale or garage sale or something like that. So we've got quite a few horror comics and reprints and stuff like that.
Heavy metal at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I only have like 2 issues. I think I have 1 issue of 1984, 1 issue of heavy metal, and then I've got like one just called Dracula. But like, and all of that stuff is just awesome. Like, I just really like. My tastes do kind of run a little bit less parallel to the sort of like British, like the goofy sort of like I love the idea of like Warhammer fantasy stuff, but like I don't like. There's like a certain like cartooniness to it that I'm just not a big fan. So it's like I can enjoy it on a very surface level, but it doesn't like influence me very much because I'm just like I kind of like when orcs are like the Lord of the Rings movies where they're like the Uruk-hai and like that kind of stuff, and then like the goblins are like kind of like wiry nightmare-y. Like I don't like it when the orcs are like, "Oh, mate, where's my fish and chips?" or whatever. I don't know. Anyways. So,
sorry, British
or
listeners.
like B-movie like Doctor Who or like Colin Baker's Doctors wrestling with one of the Warhammer orcs or something.
So tell me about your project that you just released today.
Kingdomites! Exclamation point. Techno Skull Island also exclamation point. Which is how I name all my stuff. But so Kingdomites is a Motu inspired thing that's sort of we played it. I've got a system that I'm sort of developing with my home game group, so that's not ready for anything yet. But because I like it, when I'm doing my own system, I'm just like, okay, what if you plus and minus like 3, but then you rolled 2 dice. And I'm not good at math at all, so like all of the math in my stuff is like wonky. It was a miracle that Escape worked out, where someone was like, "Oh wow, this is really interesting. Like all the math checks out." And I was like, "That is a miracle. What I've created here is some sort of divine providence, or providence, not provenance." I've been watching a lot of Antiques Roadshow lately. Kingdomites is just like a Motu inspired thing. It's just for you to, basically it's just meant for you to bash your action figures together. Also it's like I created it and I was like, I have to get something done this week. I was like, so I just like pulled for something that was like, most of my stuff is like easy stuff that I've already thought about for a few years or something like that. And then I just like pour it out on the page and then it's done and it's out in the world. And so, but I realized I had to like go back and put on the front cover that there was the basics of like how to do D20 rolling and stuff, because I was and I put like a big disclaimer in there. I was like, just a heads up, this uses polyhedral dice, and also you should probably already know how to play a complex game before you play this very simple one. But I don't know. If you know how to play like a D20 style game, but also in there too, it's like I kind of like the idea of creating something esoteric where it's like, here are rules, they are suggestions, but I'm not going to sit down and tell you, oh, you have to roll a D20 for this. You can figure that out for yourself at the table where you're, kind of doing stuff. In one way, I'm like, oh, that's like nice and whatever. But also, if I were trying to play that, I'd be like, I don't understand this, and I would throw it away. So it's for a very specific type of person that can is a go-getter and will figure things out for themselves. But yeah, there's a basic description of here's kind of how it works. You roll a d20, and then the person running the game will probably have some experience and just talk to them.
How often do you put out new material?
I'm trying to do once a week this year.
Wow.
So last year I did this thing where I listened to 366 albums because it was a leap year, and the only caveats I had in that were it had to have more than 2 songs, So I could listen to, if it was something where it was a single, I could listen to it, but it had to have at least 2 songs. So it had to be like released as like either would have been or was released as a single at some point with 2 songs on it. And I tried to limit those, but obviously for makeup reasons, I had to use a lot of them to get ahead when I would fall behind. And then I did that, and that was so much fun that I was like, oh man, I want to do something that's like one a week. Like I want to do something that's over the course of the year, every year or every week of the year, I have something to get done instead of each week making sure that I listen to 7 albums. And so it was kind of like, it was like, I can make stuff. And so I was like, how would I even make like a little zine? And then obviously I'd seen a paper divided into 3 before, but I didn't know that trifold was like a real thing. I'd never seen a game that was a trifold game until I started making them. And then I was like, oh yeah, trifold, and I Googled it, and I was like, oh. And then a lot of times I'll make something up, and then I'll people are like, oh, this is that, and I'll go look at it, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I didn't know that it was doing this. So I plead ignorance, Your Honor. I did not know a lot about I don't know. I try to develop things first, or I'll hear a term like point crawl, and then I'll be like, okay, I can do that, or that's I think I know what that is, and then I'll make something and it's different, and it's got my own sort of flavor in it, and then I'll look it up what point crawl is after I make the thing, and they're like, oh, I was close. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just having fun. This is just all for fun. All my stuff's for free.
Yeah.
It's just for fun.
Do you have next week's project in mind?
Oh, I don't. I barely did this week's on time. I've got about 5 that are half done, so I might complete one of those. But every time I make something, it's either I go through a mode where I'm like, yes, this is going to be the best, and I'm very excited about it, or I'll be making it, I'm like, this just isn't what I'm feeling right now, and so I'll kind of stash it away for later. So but there's more Hypertrench stuff coming. Obviously, people really respond well to that. I created a sort of polyhedral dice system called D2021, which just to have a basis. And also I did that as a necessity because some weeks I'm going to be more busy. Like this week I'm going to be more busy. Yeah. So I can just make a cover for it. So Out from the Glens was the first one that I released with it. Out from the Glens is how to play Burrowers, which are just halflings in my setting, are my sort of, thing that I've created. Which is a Dexter's Laboratory reference.
Oh, yeah.
The classic D&D episode. Yeah, I didn't want to be a first-footed burrower. So I was as a kid, I was they're playing the game that I like on the TV, and it's Dexter and his friends. So anyways, that's where burrowers come from. Please don't sue me, Jenny Tarnowski or whatever.
Yeah, that episode is actually a huge inspiration to how I think about how all this stuff should look.
Yeah, yes.
Because I love
maybe not the motorcycle
color
at the end where Dee Dee gives the paladin a motorcycle and the magician an assistant.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I love how everything is color coded. I haven't
seen some of your artwork. That's very not surprising to me. So very cool that we share some of the same DNA as far as
we share a lot.
That goes. But yeah, that's D&D is the name of the episode. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Or segment, I should say. I don't know what the actual episode. But yeah, I kind of do. That's the reason I made that. So it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of what I feel like doing, and I've got some more experimental stuff coming up. Kind of. I don't know how much farther I can. I'm not. In the beginning, I'm not very. But the audio dag that came together over the course of an hour.
Oh wow!
It was rolling around in the back of my head, and then I just sat down and recorded it, and then it was done. And then I re-recorded it one day later because the audio quality was absolute, just butt. But yeah, and I changed some stuff, and it didn't have originally it had a gold system where you're keeping track of gold pieces, and that was just not. I just cut that out because I was like, this thing's too long. It needs to be like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to sit down and like hold my hand up for an hour.
Do you have anyone you'd like to shout out?
Definitely the Thought Eater podcast. Froth is an exceptional human being. Also, I've been kind of helping out behind the scenes of DDG Pod, the Dungeon Designers Guild Pod. My friend Stephen Leviathan is doing a podcast where he goes back and like interviews, like, I don't know, he just talked to Mark Miller, the guy that made Traveler. He talked to Christian Mirsten, I think is the guy's name, from White Hack. So he's like going through and like talking to that stuff, and I've kind of been helping out a little bit with that. As far as like actual people that you should be following, there's just always so many. It's like the Follow Friday thing, and then you're like trying to think about like, there's just so many people doing exciting things. I don't know. But yeah, as far as like art and artist goes, I should have had something prepared, but I absolutely don't. My mind's just blanking right now, so I apologize. There's absolutely just pretty much everybody. Perplexing Ruins is great. LFOSR is great. Subterranean Ocean Survey on Instagram. They're not on Twitter. Great. I reserve the right to record audio later and send it to you. Here are a list of things that you should, a list of people that you should absolutely be doing. But yeah, for right now, it's just, I'm just trying to think of, people's art. Frankie Breakbone, I guess, would be another one.
But you created the new OSR art subreddit, right?
Yeah, Yeah, that was me.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, that's certainly how I got involved.
I got tired of posting my stuff, and it was there to be like, I don't know if this fits. I just wanted to show you the picture of the goblin I drew. Yeah. And then they were like, okay. Like, they were like really nice about it. But like, always very exciting, and got me sort of, I only came into the OSR, NSR, OSAR, DIY RPG. There's just a trillion names for it. But like, like that sort of scene about a year ago, because I was like, oh yeah, like black and white art, let's like OSR, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I've never played a game of OSE. I've never played a game of BX. I just play-by-posted my first 1E AD&D. I started with 2E, but like, I just, for one game, and then we switched to 3 because it was the year 2000. But like, I didn't know that there was like this big, like, group of artists doing stuff like we're doing.
Yeah.
And I just came into it, and then like, I saw that there was a space, but there's no space really to post stuff, and then I made it just for fun, just because like, I didn't want to keep posting, I didn't want to keep taking up room elsewhere. So that's the origin of that. It's very simple.
Nice. Well, it's pretty much how I got started, so I really appreciate it.
What, really?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll have to tell you my story off air.
Okay, sounds good.
So I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show today. Let the audience know where they can find your stuff.
Sure. Best place is probably Instagram. Instagram.com/Hodag RPG, all one word. I am on Twitter occasionally. Probably too much. And it's at Hodag and then _RPG. You can always shoot me an email at hodagrpg@gmail.com. I think I've probably written that about 9,000 times since I started my project. And then also, if you enjoy my stuff, all my stuff's for free. There's always a suggestion if you want to if you're like, I want to monetarily support you. All this stuff is done through charities, so various charities that are listed. And if I can't think of a good one, or there's not one that fits thematically, it's just always your local food bank. So do that. But like, when I started the project, I was like, this has to be free. It has to be like, I'm doing this for me, and then people are coming along with it. So, but I was also like, oh, but I could also do some good. So, like, the first one I did was, like, Last Prisoner Project and, Brussels Griffon Rescue for the Ewok one, obviously. I have in Brussels, so I also have a bunch of other, we adopt senior short-nosed dogs,
Mm.
pretty much exclusively, just to kind of give them like a doggy retirement home type thing. And so that's the
nice.
reason we have too many of them. But because they're in bad situations. But anyways, yeah. So it's like it's all charity focused.
Nice. Well, that's pretty impressive, and I think a lot of people can take a lesson from that.
Doing good feels good and is good.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
But yeah, thanks again for joining us, and to all you out there in radio land, thanks for listening, and have a good night. And you too, Hodag.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, check out theartofadventurecast.com. And if you'd like to see some of my artwork, check out macteg.com. This has been the Art of Adventure podcast. Thank you for listening.
What was the question?
I don't remember.